We've talked about managing software, so it's only right that we talk about managing hardware as well, and that's the subject of the next few sessions. The first thing we want to look at when we talk about managing hardware is figuring out what's installed on our system. We can't really manage the hardware on our Unix system unless we really know what's installed there and what its resource information is and so forth. Now there's several different ways to get the hardware information. It really depends upon what version or distribution of Unix you're using or Linux, and whether you get the information at boot time or after the system has booted. It also depends upon what system utilities you might use. And there's a wide variety of tools that you can get hardware information on in Unix and Linux, and we're just going to look at just a few examples of those tools. One way to get hardware information from FreeBSD is to catch it at boot time. Now we see that this is the typical FreeBSD boot splash screen, and we've actually paused the boot. If we actually type in 6, we can get the bootloader prompt. And there's a couple of different commands we can run here to get hardware information. First we can type in lsmod, and we'll see a lot of information there. And you could pipe this to a file if you like, but you can get an idea of what's being loaded, which kernel modules are loaded. These are kernel hardware modules, by the way. You can also type in lsdev, and lsdev will give you some information on disk devices and so forth. So you get a little bit of information there. You may get some clues using these two commands, but more than likely you're going to get a lot more information from some other utilities in BSD. Let's go ahead and do a boot. And it's interesting to note that on other versions of Linux and Unix, lsmod and lsdev and so forth, you can use those after boot as well. There's a couple of other utilities we've got loaded here. One is the lspci utility, and that's not installed by default. It has to be installed with the PCI utils port. And if you install that port, you'll get the lspci tool. And we've got computer starting up here. Let's log in. And once we log in, we could run the lspci utility. Let's pipe that into less. And we'll get a lot of information on hardware that was detected when the computer came up. And we see that we've got some Intel items there, some basic VGA information. Now, since we're using VMware, we've got a lot of VMware devices here. This will not look like this on your computer unless you're using VMware also. But if you're using an actual real computer, you'll get a lot of different information here from lspci. Now, another source of information that we can use is the dmessage command. And let's go ahead and run dmessage. And that gives us all the boot information from when the computer booted up, system messages, as well as hardware loads and so forth. So let's pipe that into less. And as you can see, we've got a lot of information going on here. It talks about memory, modules that were loaded up, keyboard, ACPI and so forth, PCI modules, ATA modules. So we've got a little bit of information here that we can use to start gathering hardware information in case we need to troubleshoot or in case we just need to do an inventory on what we've got. A lot of different information here. Now there's a couple other ways to get this information too, and let's go ahead and switch over to SLES 11, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, and we'll see another couple of ways to get this. Now we're in SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 11 here, and another way to get this information is through the proc file system. The proc file system is loaded when the computer is booted up and basically gives us information on what was discovered during system startup. Let's cd to /proc and do an ls-al. And there's a lot of different things here we can take a look at. Let's do ls-al less just to clear this up a little bit. A lot of different information here, and we can actually go in and look at some of this information if we like by catting some of these files here. For example, if we were to cat IO ports, we can see the different input-output ports that were discovered and are configured on the system. And if we look at, say, meminfo, we could get memory information, we could get SCSI information, partition information. There's a lot of different things we can get from looking at etc-proc, and all this is dynamically reproduced every time the system starts. So this is yet another way you can get information from a Linux or Unix system on hardware.